In the last chapter of the book, I point out everything I know about couples therapy is wrong too. Yeah. Because what I'm saying is, if you think you know for sure, if you're ideological rather than having ideas, that becomes a problem. That becomes a problem when therapists become ideological. It closes your mind. Like, I have my favorite ways of thinking about this, and I'm going to fit you in that category whether you like it or not. That does not help people.
So do you ever envy those so-called hashtag couples goals?
Well, when you first fall in love with someone, you get butterflies every time you see them.
You lust them.
You're infatuated with them.
You want to be with them all the time, like best friends.
Do you want that to last forever?
Together, let's discover what it takes to say a massive yes to all the above through our topical discussions, our world-renowned guests that will help guide the way to a happier, sexier, and fun-loving relationship.
We're not doctors or therapists. We are just two normal individuals who have had many ups and downs in our 23-year relationship.
And counting.
We've amassed our own wisdom over the years, but we're still learning, just like you.
Nina and I believe you can have it all and still live your best lives, as long as you're willingly and consistently discover each other in new ways. And that right there is what the show is all about.
We're Nina.
And Roger.
And this is the Head Over Heels Show.
Yeah, baby. Hello again, everybody. My name is Roger, as you know, and I'm here with my extraordinarily beautiful wife, Nina. And we are the Head Over Heels Show.
That was a long... You're so cute. I love you.
So, how was your week, baby?
It started with a lot of stress, and it ended with a lot of fun.
There you go.
So I can't complain.
We had our kitchen floors and most of our basement ripped up because of a flood. So the insurance came here and took care of that. So, our lovely kitchen is not so lovely anymore. And it's a little stressful.
Well, it is. It's half broken. You're worried about everything, and you have to work in this environment and.
And by accident, we kind of booked 2 days out back to back, which we never do.
Never.
We never, ever want to go out 2 days in a row ever again. It's a little bit hard to do when you're in your 40s.
Yes. But, we can still handle it, but we don't want to.
Exactly.
We went out on Friday. We did have a stressed couple of weeks, so we're like, we talk about this all the time, so we should be can't just preach it, we actually have to live it.
Yeah.
We can't let the stress consume us, our relationship, our every day of the week. Mm. So we said, fuck it. We've been stressed out for 2 weeks over this, and we're working through in this environment and doing it all. Let's go release some tension.
Yeah. So our plan was to go out Saturday. We were always planning on going out Saturday, go out
Saturday
for dinner.
Was booked, yeah.
For dinner and, dance, all that kind of stuff. And then we completely forgot about Friday. Friends were in town and we couldn't say no, so we had to go. And we went and we had a good time and we had a few drinks. We didn't stay out super late.
No, it was a quick in and out kind of thing. It was fun.
But Saturday, on the other hand, we got a little carried away. We got a little carried away because of, some of our, really, really, really nice and extremely generous TikTok friends decided to feed us as many drinks as we possibly could.
That tequila was so bad. The entire Sunday we both.
It's the shots, right? The shots you don't realize. You take a shot and it hasn't gone through your system. So if you take another one, that's like 2 back-to-back drinks. Bang, bang, bang. I don't remember going home.
Well, luckily we have Ubers.
Yes.
We don't have to worry about that ever.
Jeez.
But it was a great night. We had a good time. We enjoyed.
Not so good on Sunday, but
no. But we enjoyed some really fun time with our friends.
Yeah.
A lot of friends came by. Every time we go out, we end up having it's table of 2. It ended up being a table of 20 because we know so many people that come around and we have so much fun with them. We danced and drank.
Bumped into a few people from the gym. That's pretty good.
You pay for it on Sunday, but and on Monday.
Ouch.
Yeah. But listen, that's what we talk about all the time. Stress is inevitable. It's going to happen. Life has got ups and downs. You got to take it easy. You got to have fun sometimes and enjoy it.
You got to throw in some fun. You always got to throw in some fun. Maybe this isn't your idea of fun, whatever it is, your idea of fun, you got to try and include that in your, I don't know, weekly or, I don't know, include in your life every once in a while so that.
Well, I was just talking to a friend of mine who was up in Blue Mountain, which is a ski resort. And they were saying, yeah, I mean, this is our fun thing what we love to do is go up skiing for the weekend. And that's our like relaxing, stress-free time.
Absolutely.
So that's yours. Do that. Go and, I don't know, get a spa day, whatever it is. Go have fun. Just release some of that stress.
Yeah.
Because it's good for your marriage, I promise.
It's good for your life. It doesn't matter if you're married or not. Just make sure you're including some fun in your life. Because, I'm not so worried about the floors being damaged. I'm not so worried about, losing a whole Sunday because we were hungover and tired, even though I had to work doing some open houses and stuff. It wasn't very good. I stayed a good, 6 feet apart and had nothing to do with COVID. I didn't want him to smell the Casamigos off my breath. Because no matter how much I brushed my teeth out, that stuff was just coming out of my system. Too much tequila.
Okay, no more tequila for you.
No, hell no.
But it's once in a blue moon. We don't do that all the time, so it's okay. It's fine. But let's talk about today's show, baby.
Yeah.
Today we have some special guests on. There's their husband and wife, Dr. Bruce Chalmer, and his wife, Judy Alexander, are couples therapists, as well as fellow podcasters.
Fellow podcasters, they're therapists. Well, he's a therapist, but what I love about it is he practices what he preaches.
Yes.
He's got a spectacular marriage. You can tell just by listening to them that they're so much in love and in sync with each other.
The energy is contagious when I was
practicing what you preach,
Yeah. So they are here today to talk to us about Dr. Chalmer's new book. It's called It's Not About the Communication. We talk about that all the time. You actually have an episode on that.
Well, this is why they reached out to us. They said that they were listening to some podcasts, some other relationship podcasts, and they came across ours. And Nina had made a comment that it's not always about communication. It's about what you say and what you do and
how you
communicate. Yeah. And that triggered them to give us a call because of his book.
It's a great episode, you guys. We learned tons from them. They're a little ahead of us, so they have a lot more experience in all of this, but they do exactly what we do. They talk about how to have a long and fun relationship, which is amazing. So listen all the way to the end because they're so good and they're so lovely.
Oh, and we're going to be on their podcast next month at some point. We'll let you know, but they're going to be interviewing us as well. So
without further ado, you guys, welcome Dr. Chalmer and his wife, Judy Alexander.
Yeah.
All right, Bruce and Judy, welcome to Head of the Hill Show. We're so excited to have you on here today.
Well, thank you. We're very excited to be here.
We're delighted.
One thing that intrigued me about you guys is, Nina and I, obviously we have this podcast. We're 100 and some odd episodes deep. And a lot of our talks that we have with either guests or ourselves, we talk about communication and how it's important to have in a relationship, and some people are lacking. And then I see your book that says it's not about the communication.
Yep.
Exactly.
So
Which is what we're doing as well.
we might as well delete all our episodes.
Yeah.
And no, you don't have to do that.
Actually, you don't. You talked about that.
As a matter of fact,
one of the episodes that we were listening to, Nina, you actually said it's not about communication when the one it's competition.
Yes.
So, but I'll let you talk about it since it's your book, Bruce.
Well, I will tell you, when I heard that, that's when I said to Judy, Judy was listening to it. We like, Ed, you probably do this too. We check out other podcasts and, but possibly with an eye toward either inviting you to be on ours or being on yours. We've actually, as you know, as your listeners don't know yet, but we've invited you to be on ours as well. So you've got to talk about that in a few weeks. So, so what are we looking for? Interesting folks, and you guys certainly are interesting folks. And I heard, so we're listening to this one and I hear Nina saying, it's not actually about communication. And my ears perk up because I just published a book. It's called It's Not About Communication. And it's exactly what you were saying. And I was so impressed because I said to Judy, wow, we gotta get in touch with these folks, because I hadn't heard anybody say, what I said to Judy was either she's read my book or she's written it. because that's exactly the point you were making was exactly the point. People are communicating. Everybody comes to me. This is kind of the premise of the book. Everybody comes to me. I'm a couples therapist, by the way, just for your listeners. I'm a couples therapist.
Why don't you introduce yourself and let us know who you are? And let our listeners
we should do that. Right. Yeah, so I'm a couples therapist. I've been doing couples therapy for 30 years, counting my internship. So it's a long time, and in private practice. Well, you can say.
Okay, and I'm a teacher, a retired educator. I'm currently a published playwright, and I'm currently doing some short story writing. And I also tutor children and adults for bar and bat mitzvah.
Very nice. And how long have you been married or together?
It's funny, we're coming up, our anniversary of meeting is 20 years coming up in February, a few weeks in February, and we'll be married 19 years in June.
Amazing.
But we're a second marriage. We each had kids from a previous marriage, and so which also we talk about a fair amount on our podcast as well.
So anyway, you were saying about communication.
Yeah,
how do we get back to that?
Yeah, so in terms of, I realized as a couples therapist, I did a sort of a seat of the pants guess is about 2/3 of the folks, just roughly 2/3 of the folks that I see in a first session will say something like, hey, we need help with communication. We're not communicating well. We keep getting into fights, or we keep getting into these long silences or whatever. And can you give us some rules to help us communicate? And if you Google that, rules for communication, you will find a bazillion websites give you all these wonderful rules and some and the vast majority of them, I haven't looked at the bazillions of them, but the ones I've looked at, they all look pretty good. They're not saying things that I think, oh, that's ridiculous. And there's all kinds of techniques people can learn. You've probably heard of, active listening and I statements, and nonviolent communication is a whole thing. And I have great respect for all of those things. The trouble is they have it backwards, because what they are saying, and I'll bet you've heard of John Gottman's research. He's very well known in the whole, right? Everybody talks for good reason. He's great. I quote him all the time. John Gottman's research will tell you what a couple looks like when they're doing well. This is how they communicate when they're doing well. The fallacy everybody bumps into, though, is they think if you imitate people how they communicate when they're doing well, you will therefore do well. And that's not true. If you imitate people who are doing well and you're not actually doing well, you will still be communicating, say, anger, resentment, mistrust, contempt. All of those things will come through no matter how carefully you try to dress them up in I statements. And conversely, if you are doing well, you won't need all the formal rules because you're doing well, and the formal rules are just cumbersome and sort of silly. So the rules are fine as a description of how people are doing when they're communicating well, but teaching them does you no good at all. And in fact, it can actually do harm, because then people start arguing about how they're not following the rules right, instead of actually saying what they need to say.
Right.
So that's the premise of my book, basically. That's what I mean by it's not about communication.
I love it. And I believe that 100% to be true as well, because we've been selling real estate for a good 17 years together. Mm-hmm. And for some reason, Bruce, when we get a call, it's most of the time couples
getting
divorced or separating. So we'll walk into I'll be sitting there and I'll be like, thinking to myself, why are they getting divorced? I either feel their energy that they're really good together, or I see that they should have never got together in the first place. Right. And then I think about it and I listen, and I've been listening. And most of the time I listen, they over communicate, but in the wrong way. Mm-hmm. The banging of the doors, their eyes rolling, the mumbling underneath their breath. And they're saying to you that there's something wrong, but the other person is not listening, So, and then a lot of times they're like, oh, we're getting divorced because we don't have a communication. We have a communication problem. We can't communicate together. And I'm thinking to myself, no, it's the opposite. You are actually communicating, but you are such in competition with each other that you don't see that.
Yeah, exactly.
You didn't do this. It's your fault, or this happened because of you. It's like all of this plays a role in that divorce, I believe.
Mm-hmm. Sure.
We're not therapists. We're not therapists. We've been together 26 years. So we've learned from our experience what works with us, what doesn't work. And communication is not our issue at all.
Mm-hmm.
As Bruce likes to say, it's not how you're communicating. No, it's not. Yes,
it's not how you're communicating.
It's not how you're communicating. It's what you're communicating, because you're definitely communicating.
Yeah, the how follows from the what. And that's the thing. When what you're communicating is love and respect and compassion and caring, all of that good stuff, then that will show up in how you're communicating as well. And, this is all a lot of stuff that Gottman points out as well. When there's a nice big store of goodwill, when there's lots of experience, when people's habitual experience of each other is they feel good in each other's presence, there's all kinds of room for people being people and occasionally not being so nice, or occasionally being in a bad mood, or occasionally, bumping into each other one way or another. There's room for that when there's general goodwill. And then, as they say, you don't need rules at that point because there's plenty of room. What couples need to do, which again, Gottman says a lot, lots of experiences of turning toward each other in very positive ways is the sort of thing that builds a relationship that will then, they'll feel good about.
Yeah, in the podcast I was listening to, when somebody, or I guess you had talked about a certain client or patient, not client, you were saying...
I say both, by the way, either one.
Okay, I wasn't sure.
Either one's fine. Yeah.
But I guess that person was saying that, yes, I realize now that I am communicating, but what I'm communicating to my wife is that I think that she's an idiot. Or
yes,
that
exactly.
And I see that sometimes when Nina and I argue. Not that I'm saying that she's an idiot, but I'm constantly trying to make her wrong, or she's constantly trying to make me wrong. And I guess that's what you mean. Like, it's not necessarily about the communication; it's how you present it, or how you.
That's precisely it. Yeah. Yeah, that was such a neat experience, that particular couple, and that just happened in the last year. I was in the middle of writing the book and I said, I have to include this anecdote because they were so thoughtful. And, for the guy to come to that conclusion, to realize, oh my God, it's not that I have to figure out how to sound respectful. It's that I actually am being disrespectful. He had to recognize that in himself. That took a lot of courage. And, she, for her part, had to recognize, first of all, she had to not want to cut his head off or some other bodily part when she realized that. But what she realized, the other part of that anecdote, what I thought was fascinating, because she was smiling when he said that in the session, when he said, oh my God, I do think she's a moron, and she was smiling because she said, yeah, and the trouble is I agreed with him. I thought I was a moron too. She had received that message very early on. So they both were realizing that they knew better. I mean, she turns out she's very intelligent. They both knew that in a different, on a different level. And he was absolutely recognizing, the problem isn't how I'm communicating to her. The problem is I actually have to recognize I don't know better than she does about everything. And once he did that, then he could express his opinion, even if he disagreed, and she could hear it because he wasn't putting it down.
You actually touched about it when you were talking about when you wrote your book. I mean, you're the therapist, you have all the experience, 30 some odd years and your wife read the book and she said, maybe you should change a few things. And you did. And you felt it made the book that much better. I mean,
absolutely. Yeah.
But she's a listener. She read it and she would be essentially a reader, like that you're trying to present the books to, you know what I mean?
Well, we are your biggest critiques and biggest fans,
Exactly.
That's yeah. Judy read the first draft of the book, and I made lots of changes based on her feedback because it was really helpful. She told me the part where she was falling asleep, and I said, "Okay, gotcha." I rewrote that section. I think it's a lot better.
It wasn't just that section; it was a lot.
Yeah.
No, but that's the part about being a writer is you have to learn to be able to take criticism and feedback and say, the things that you hold so precious, like you got to let it go. If somebody isn't get it, or if they're going to say, you want people to pick up that book. You don't want them to say,
Yeah.
So,
well, you want people to pick up the book, but you don't want it just to be therapists. You want other people to be able to read it and understand it, right? So,
right.
Exactly.
And actually, it's both for therapists and for non-therapists, lay people.
Anybody in a couple.
Yeah.
I was just going to ask you, who needs to read that book? Somebody just answer that question. Anybody?
Well, from my perspective, everybody needs to read the book.
Everybody,
But really, in terms of anybody who's there are folks who are maybe in a couple where it seems to be going fine and they're just interested in that kind of thing. There's a population of those people. Lots of people who are in a relationship and they're in therapy or considering therapy, and they will benefit because it'll tell them what they really should look for rather than what they think they should look for. The subtitle of the book is Why Everything You Know About Couples Therapy is Wrong, which is a rather arrogant subtitle, if I do say so. And it invites people, and I'll give you a spoiler, by the way, spoiler alert. In the last chapter of the book, I point out everything I know about couples therapy is wrong too.
Yeah.
Because what I'm saying is, if you think you know for sure, if you're ideological rather than having ideas, that becomes a problem. That becomes a problem when therapists become ideological. It closes your mind. Like, I have my favorite ways of thinking about this, and I'm going to fit you in that category whether you like it or not. That does not help people. And so, I'm not claiming I know everything about couples therapy either.
Right.
But go into it with sort of an open mindset is, as I say, anybody who's in therapy, who's considering therapy, and also therapists themselves who are trying to help people, I think they'll all benefit from it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So, okay. So if you say that it's not necessarily about the communication, it's how you communicate, what would be a few tips that somebody could get from your book that would help them better their communication?
Yes, indeed. So the way you better communication is by functioning better in other ways, is getting to the place. And we have a 7-word formula. That's our podcast is called Couples Therapy in 7 Words, that really addresses that question.
Mm-hmm.
What is it that will help a couple do better? So I made this formula up close to 30 years ago now. When somebody asked me, how do you do couples therapy anyway? What are you basically telling people? And he realized we're kind of on our way out of a consultation meeting, with some colleagues. And he knew it was a silly question to ask on the way out of the meeting. But I thought about it and I said, well, I suppose what I'm basically telling people is be kind and don't panic. That's only 5 words if you count and. Be kind and don't panic. Because be kind in the sense of kinship, treat someone, if you're in a marriage especially, that they're your kin, they're on your team. You're not just random people thrown together. It's not just a contractual arrangement. It's a family arrangement.
Mm.
And you can't do that if you're in a panic. So a lot of the work is about being able to bump into stuff, where someone you love is hurting you, or you're hurting someone you love, or you're just disagreeing about something important, and you tend to panic. And when people panic, they cannot hear each other at all.
Mm.
So be kind and don't panic is basically what I'm saying. Lots of the techniques of therapy are about how do you not panic? And then people would say, well, thanks. How do I not panic? And I realized, well, there is the tough question. How do I not panic? And I realized, well, there is a 2-word response to that. And it's 2 words are not sufficient to say it, but there is 2 more words to add, which is have faith. Be kind, don't panic, and have faith. Because if you have faith, and I'll explain what I mean by faith, that's the antidote to panic. That's how you not panic. So faith, I'm not talking about religious faith necessarily, though it's not inconsistent with religious faith.
I was going to say, a lot of people are not religious, so they don't want to use that word faith. What do you mean?
Exactly. Yeah, they freak out at the word faith. That's true. A lot of therapists freak out at the word faith too. I'm using it in a very general way. I'm not excluding religious faith, but I've known religious folks who aren't showing faith the way I describe, and I've known non-religious folks who are. So what do I mean by faith? What I mean by faith is a mindset that says this whole existence business, this whole living thing is basically good. It's basically good, not basically bad, but basically good. It's a value judgment. It's a mindset that says, okay, here we are, we're having a struggle, we're having an argument, we're having pain, whatever we're having. It's painful. I wish it weren't, but there's something about it that it's based on something fundamentally good.
Yeah.
We have these differences for good reason, even when they're painful. It doesn't guarantee that you stay together even. Do you know what I mean? Sometimes what people have to bump into is, oh my God, there's a deal breaker here. Somebody figures out in a heterosexual couple, somebody figures out they're gay. It's not going to work. That's a deal breaker, but people who approach that with faith, I had a couple I worked with not that long ago where the man didn't figure out he was gay, but he didn't figure out he was trans either, but he figured out there's an aspect of him that needed to express as feminine. And his wife, who loved him and whom he loved, just couldn't be in a marriage where that was the case. It just didn't work for her. They were so courageous in loving each other through that, but they divorced.
Mm-hmm.
And they worked through it, and they're still, as far as I know, I haven't seen them for a while, but they're, last I saw, they were still family, but they weren't married anymore.
Yeah.
So, that's what I mean by manifesting faith. When couples come in with infidelity issues, which is horrendous, very difficult stuff, the ones that will get through that without breaking up and without going totally to pieces are the ones who are displaying some kind of faith. And faith in that sense manifests as, oh my God, there must be, even though you cheated and you shouldn't have cheated, and we both think it's wrong, there must be something to it because, you're not a terrible person.
Yeah.
So we're going to have to actually look at it instead of saying, no, just go back to the way it was. That's what I mean by showing faith.
Yeah. Well, actually, it's funny because we did an episode, our last episode, we had people on social media ask us a few questions. One of them was about cheating. How do you get over cheating? And I asked the question, like, what kind of cheating? Like, there's so many different kinds of cheating. There's, one night stand cheating. There's, an emotional cheating where you're actually dating somebody. Maybe there's no sex involved.
Mm-hmm.
And then, of course, there's sex. And I said, well, whatever route that person went, if you want to be in the relationship, what you got to do is look and see what maybe you could change. Not necessarily saying that it's that person, your fault, but there's something that needs to be changed. You can try and change that person, or you can change yourself and in hopes that they're going to change themselves as well. You know what I mean? So it's, yeah.
I guess I do have a lot of faith in mankind, because I'm that kind of person that would think, what? This thing happened, it's the wrong thing, but there's something better out there. Do you know what I mean? There's always that thing in the back of my mind. Like, I grew up in a war most of my childhood. I was born in Baghdad in Iraq. So throughout those 15 years of war, I always had faith that there was going to be something better, that we were going to get somewhere to safety, that we were going to get out of this misery that we're in. That never, and I wasn't that religious. Like, my parents were Catholic, but I always felt that there was something more good out there than bad. Do you know what I mean?
Right. Yeah. So you didn't have that sense of hopelessness, which a lot of people, do find themselves. And that's, I think, what you're talking about when you say faith, that there's something that's fundamentally right to be the way it is, but you can see the light at the end of the tunnel.
Yeah. And it means you can work with it instead of panicking about it.
Yeah.
Right.
So you're undergoing pain, you're undergoing fear or whatever, but you can work with it, because there's also in that very much the notion of faith says, like in a couple, both parties are valid human beings. Yes. Even when they've messed up, they're valid human beings. And that's I think, a really important part of faith as well, because then you can actually, it's interesting. The folks who have done something wrong and can't seem to apologize in an effective way are often people who feel really bad about themselves underneath. They can't bring themselves to say, oh my God, I screwed up, I'm so sorry, because it feels like annihilation, because they're already feeling so bad about themselves. And so it's paradoxical. In order to make a decent apology, you have to feel basically that you're not so horrible. And then you can feel the guilt, the appropriate guilt, because otherwise it becomes intolerable.
That's it. I'm using that word from now on. Bruce, my word is faith, because throughout 26 years with this man, all the ups and downs, I always had a faith. Okay, there's more good in this man than bad. So we're going to stay that way. I'm serious. I always, when there's arguing, when you're arguing with your wife or your husband, and you sit there, you're like, oh, I can't. You either think, I can't take this. This has to end. Or you say this, I can fix this. I have faith in my abilities. I have faith I can do the work on myself and on our marriage to make sure it works. I don't know. That's how I've been thinking about it my whole life. So I think, what do you do for the majority of couples that are having issues in their marriage, that they can't bring up themselves to do that work and realize, okay, I'm an idiot, or she's an idiot. Let's do some work on our relationship. What do you tell them? Where do they start? Because we get a lot of those questions.
Yeah, I start with, it's funny, one of the things, I put another plug for the book here. One of the chapters in the book is called Couples Therapy Under the Hood, where I basically outline my whole first session with folks, which is really quite structured. It's very structured, and then it's like improv after that. It's structured, and then it's not. And the structure that I start with is often by telling people about one of my favorite topics, which is recognizing the needs we're all trying to fulfill in a couple. We're trying to fulfill two different sets of needs, and they're very different. One set is for stability and the other is for intimacy. And they are two different sets of skills required. Stability skills are all about keeping the anxiety level low, not freaking your partner out, not freaking yourself out. Intimacy skills are all about tolerating anxiety. It's about being willing to go into the difficult conversation and not, I guess I can say in your podcast, not freak the fuck out, right? I can say
No, you can totally say
right. Because we usually keep ours close to PG, but I noticed on yours,
we throw in a
it's not PG, sorry.
few F-bombs, you can do that, yeah. So
actually, you talk a lot about that in your first book.
yes,
Yeah.
yes, I
which
do.
was reigniting the spark, why stable relationships lose intimacy and how to get it back. And so I didn't mean to interrupt, but I figured I'd throw in a plug for that.
For that one too.
Right.
Yeah, I'd spend even more time on
Spend a lot of time on the
stability and
intimacy.
intimacy.
Yeah.
And I actually explained that to couples in the first session. And it's funny, and I'll say to people, look, I have this favorite way of structuring the conversation. And I realize, when what you have is a hammer, everything looks like a nail. I have my favorite way of doing it and everything. I'll bet this will work for you. But the feedback I keep getting is, oh, that's interesting. We hadn't thought of it that way. Yeah. Anytime you get people saying, oh, I hadn't thought of it that way, something good is happening, because they're stuck in a way of thinking about it. That's the pain they're in. So the stability intimacy bit, they'll say, oh, I hadn't thought of it that way. And then they will often say, wow, that so applies to us. And the symptoms, especially with intimacy, what happens when what stable couples tend to do, stability is important, of course. They're both needs.
Right.
Stability is important. What stable couples tend to do is, especially if they do things like have kids, it just ups the ante like crazy. They will avoid rocking the boat. And that means often they will inadvertently avoid intimacy. By intimacy, I don't just mean sex. I mean lots of different ways of intimacy. They will avoid bringing up a difficult conversation, even if it isn't like, there's difficult conversations like garden variety complaints. I have no complaints with Judy, but occasionally she will have complaints with me because I'm the one that causes the complaint. So, and I've learned to listen to that. That's quite properly. And she'll bring up something, and she's so nice about it, and I can hear it, and that works out very well. But a lot of times, what people will do, even with a garden variety complaint, is worry about, oh no, how's this going to be received? And if it has not been received well, then they'll start getting afraid of it. But not even complaints. It could be something like, I've been thinking, I want to go to Florida in the winter or something like that. Here we are. For your listeners, we're in Florida for a few weeks this winter. We live in Vermont, but we're in Florida. But to be able to bring up something you're dreaming about, or more, like in the bedroom. I think I want to try this thing in bed, and I'm not sure if you're going to freak out and think I'm really weird for wanting to try that. To be able to say that and not freak out and raise anxiety to do it, because you're going to be worried about how your partner's going to receive it. That's an intimacy skill. And if you cut that off, or if you attenuate that, make it less, what happens is the couple acts like, my favorite metaphor here is, if you think about a plant, like they're paving over a sidewalk and there's some seeds, germinated seeds they paved over, they will try and crack the sidewalk. Because stability is the root system that holds it in place, but intimacy is the energy for growth. And if you try and cut that off from a couple, the couple will try and crack the sidewalk. And what it looks like is not pretty. It'll look like things like affairs sometimes. It'll look like fighting over everything and nothing except what they probably are really worried about. It'll look like long silences because they're afraid to talk to each other. It'll look like sex life going down the tubes. Or going down the tubes would be see, mixed metaphors. Anytime you bring up sex, everything is a double entendre. So sex life not going down the tubes, whatever that would be. The point is not having sex. Yeah. Anyway, that's kind of the idea of stability. So I explain that to folks, and that gets the conversation going. And they will, as I say in the book, I lay it out in much more detail about exactly what questions I tend to ask in a first session, and after that, it's pretty much improv. And I like to compare it to theater improv. You familiar with improv at all? You ever do it?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. Great. I can imagine that from hearing your podcast.
Actors, so we see it all the time.
Yeah. I'm sorry. Say again.
Some of our best friends are actors.
Oh, yes, exactly. So you're familiar with that. We have actors in our family as well. Actually, of our 5 kids, 3 of them have acting, or either currently or have acting backgrounds.
Oh, nice.
So we're used to actors too. But the thing about improv is there's always a prompt,
Yeah.
It's not totally unstructured. It's like, okay, here's the scene. What was the one you suggested? We're in a car. I put it in the book. Yeah, it was yours. It was brilliant. It was yours. You're in a car. You're two people. You're in a car. You're a couple, and you're in a car, and your car breaks down, and and you're out of cell range, and somebody comes along and picks you up, and you accept the ride, and they start asking you weird questions. Go. That would be an improv prompt, and that, of course, if you think about it, is pretty much sort of kind of what happens in therapy.
Okay.
This weird person picks you up and starts asking you strange questions. So the thing about improv is there's one rule, as far as I understand it, there's one rule, which is it's always yes and, right? No matter what weird thing somebody does in an improv session, you never say, no, we're not going to do that. We're going to do this. You always go with that and then add something of your own. That's what makes improv funny. And what happens in therapy, I'm claiming, is the therapist's job is to provide the yes and. It's like, wow, let's hear more about that, because the couple isn't able to do that at first because they're too freaked out.
Right.
So they're not in yes and mode. They're in no damn it mode. And the therapist's job is to keep on showing that sort of faith in the process. And then the couple tends to absorb that faith. And then you get really lively conversations, none of which could have been predicted.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, to go back on all the stuff you had just said, one thing you had said about people who argue about certain things or nothing, absolutely nothing. And that's one thing that my daughter says to us is when you guys argue, you always argue about absolutely nothing. You don't understand what you're arguing about, but you're arguing passionately about it.
Yeah.
You argue about nothing.
But in our defense, it's very short arguments.
Yeah.
It's done in a couple of minutes.
I always joke and say, I only make up sex.
Yeah, there you go.
And another thing you had said earlier, you said that, you don't have any complaints about her, but she has the complaints about you. And I'm like, well, is it you not wanting to rock the boat by not having any complaints?
No, I'll tell you what it is, and I'll be totally transparent about that. No, it's actually it's one of my favorite tips. Funny, I have here's another plug. I have a newsletter. People are welcome to go to my website, brucechalmer.com, and sign up for my newsletter. And one of the things I just addressed, I think in the very first issue of the newsletter, was I put in, pro tip, never dishonor your spouse, either in public or in private, but especially in public. So if I'm going to tell a story in which one of us is the dingbat, it is always me. Okay. And I say that partly facetiously and partly very seriously. When I told that little bit just then, saying, I have no complaints about Judy, she has complaints about me, I would never in a million years say a complaint I have about her in public. And frankly, I can't think of any, frankly. So that part's honest.
And I don't have very many complaints about it.
100%. I will actually be talking to girlfriends, or they'll be complaining about their husband. I'm like, I can't believe you're actually complaining about your husband. Like, the words don't come out of my mouth. He is always put on a pedestal, especially in public. I never, ever complain in any way about him, because at the end of the day, I chose him to be my husband. I love everything about him, whether it's good, bad, ugly. I love it.
Yes.
You know what I mean? So
yeah, definitely.
I see women like rolling their eyes or talking behind their back.
I get the same thing with guys too. When I go out, guys, they're bitching and complaining about their wives.
Oh, yeah.
I don't have those kind of complaints. I might, I might have little things that you can say that, that drives you crazy, but they're not complaints. They're not something I don't want her around me for. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, and it's as much a statement about you as about her, probably even more. You know what I'm saying? It's like, she does this thing and it confuses me. That's not about her. That's about me. And the other piece, and I think you sort of said it or implied it, that idea when when you said, you love everything about him, even the flaws. Do you know what I mean? I think that's a really important part. Even the parts that are areas of friction, I love, because I was just talking with a couple about this earlier today, as a matter of fact, that concept that you love the parts of the person that are the complementary parts, not the identical parts, Right. It's the sort of complaints you might have is, hey, would you wipe off the sink, when you get done using it or something like that, And I love the fact that she's that way, being a bit stereotypical. I love her feminine to my masculine. And the fact that it is, I'm going to be the one she's going to have to say, would you please wipe it off, because she's wiping it off, and or I don't care. You know what I mean? That phenomenon is part of the aspects of her that I'm absolutely head over heels, to use your name of your podcast, head over heels in love with. Yeah. That's, it's all that stuff that I love, even the stuff that occasionally, causes a moment of irritation is the stuff that I love.
Yeah, but that's the thing. Like sometimes, now Bruce doesn't do a lot of things that drive me crazy. I will say that right off the top. So I know he was trying to be sweet when he said nothing she does bothers me. I don't know, I bother her. But if there are little things, I look at it this way. Am I going to be put out by something that he does that I might not want him to do? Or I'll say to myself, he does so much around here that helps me. What difference does it make if he leaves, something on the floor or something on the counter? It's like, I can pick it up. What, he's got to pick up everything? It's the way I look at it, because he does so much that helps me that I don't mind if he does little stupid things either. So it's like, it's my attitude. And it's like, I can either choose to be annoyed or just choose to say, he forgot it. So big deal. It's not a big deal.
You will get annoyed
on that. Sorry?
I said, you will get annoyed sometimes. I do get annoyed sometimes, but I sit there and say, you know what? The pros outweigh the cons in him. There's so much qualities.
Yeah, I mean, here's an example. This morning, I come into the kitchen. Now, okay, yes, I didn't even say anything to him about this, but there's cereal all over the floor.
Which I don't notice. That's the trouble.
He's very unobservant. So am I, but he's even worse. And I know he didn't even notice it. And I waited to see if he would notice it. He came back in and he left and he didn't notice it. And some of it was kind of ground into the kitchen floor. And I said, then he went back and he went to work. And I said, I can clean that up. Number one, he's never going to see it. Number two, what am I going to do? Say to him, I'll clean up the floor again. I'm not his mother. But I can clean it up because I know he's going to be doing the dishes later. I'll leave pots in the sink and he'll wash them. I'll say, why did you wash my pot? And, I was going to do this. No. It's not your pot. It's in our sink. It's my pot too. It's like, okay, he's such a sweetheart. So what, it's going to kill me to sweep up the cereal and, scrub it out of the floor? No.
What you're saying, and actually, and you were saying this too, it's choosing the relationship over any particular way of doing it. Mm-hmm. And look, that works when it works. It works when we are fundamentally compatible. I mean, that's what that's about. Yes. And I do recognize, unfortunately, I certainly recognize this. There are folks who get together, two good people who get together, who it turns out just aren't compatible. Yeah. There are the obvious ways about, as I say, somebody turns out to be gay. Well, sorry, it's not going to work. Yeah. But then there are the ones about somebody is like a total slob and the other's a total neatnik, and it's too much. Right. You know what I mean? And they just can't accommodate each other. And, that sometimes means bummer, but it's not going to work out well. Mm-hmm. But when you have that basic compatibility, it's just this, I'll use the buzzword that Gottman uses, positive sentiment override is his fancy way of saying it. He says, when there's lots and lots of experiences, I said it earlier, lots of experiences of goodwill, that's exactly what you're saying.
Well, that's it. Yes,
you manage the annoyances and you choose the relationship instead of complaining about it.
Exactly.
And we do that a lot, and it keeps reinforcing things.
Yeah.
So I can hear a story like that, and my heart goes. Now I'm going to realize I'm going to be looking more carefully for the cereal on the floor. But aside from that, my heart leaps with love because you're choosing them. It's another Gottman expression. It's turning toward instead of turning away.
Right. It's just amazing. And you know what? And this is, earlier we were talking about our being head over heels. This is the reason why we chose that name, because throughout our experience together, throughout our ups and downs, which we have a lot of them, as every couple does, we always felt infatuated with each other, both of us. Mm-hmm. We would argue, and a few minutes later we'd be like, but I'm crazy about you. I'm in love with you. And then it's that infatuation sort of, when we were trying to talk about the name of our podcast 3 years ago, we're like, what did we come up with? We're like, well, we're always infatuated with one another. Why don't we use something around that? And that's how we came up with Head of the Show. Because
And it comes across, that I will say that you guys come across as having really good, loving energy with each other.
Well, that's one thing I noticed about you guys just from listening to a couple of your podcasts and talking to you guys right now. And I actually wrote this down. It was like,
you can see that
knowing that you're so good together, and that you're in the like a couples therapist. I mean, I'm sure you see it. We see it in the field that we are, podcasting and all that stuff, relationships. There's a lot of people out there that are preaching how to have a great relationship or how to, find the perfect husband or wife, and they're single and they don't, or they're divorced 3 times and they're, what I mean? They don't know how to use it themselves. It's like,
and we feel it when we're interviewing them, we can feel it that they don't have the same energy. You know what I mean? As opposed to you guys, you can see how connected you guys are.
It's like going to see a broke money manager. Like, you don't want to, if they don't.
It's true. Yeah.
If you don't know how to do it, how can they tell you? Like, you obviously learn a lot from experience and the way you handle yourself in a, let's say, argument or a relationship dynamic. So, I mean, obviously, having you as a therapist would help immensely compared to somebody who's unhappily in their relationship.
I learned a lot in the last 40 minutes that we were talking to you guys just from this. So it's incredible. This is why we do this show, because we are not therapists or professionals in this, but we have wisdom and experience of 26 years together doing it, and day in and day out and raising children. So we feel like we have something to say, and then so we're saying what our experience are. But by you guys being on our show, we're learning.
Yeah.
Because we want to make sure this relationship goes for a long time, and as good as it is. So thank you for being on our show. We really appreciate you guys.
Oh,
Now,
delighted. We're looking forward to having you on ours, actually, and we'll be interviewing you and finding out a lot more about your history and background and getting that wisdom,
Thank you. But so why don't you tell our listeners where to find you guys and about your book, how to get your book?
So easiest way is in terms of the book, if you go to my website, brucechalmer.com, that's BruceChalmer, brucechalmer.com. You'll have all the information there about how to get a hold of the book. You can find it anywhere books are sold. It's also, just yesterday, I will crow, we hit #1 bestseller in the category couples and family therapy on Amazon.
Oh my goodness!
Really pleased at that. Yeah, that was amazing.
Yeah.
That's
Number 2 in divorce. In that
number
category.
2 in the divorce category of all things, and number 3 in clinical psychology. Yeah.
Amazing.
So I was really pleased with that. So people should go and see what all the fuss is about. If you want more about the two of us, especially, you can go to our Couples Therapy in 7 Words website. It's ctin7.com, like couples therapy in 7.
And the
number 7, ctin7.com.
We'll have all that in our show notes as well for our listeners for them to take it.
That's great.
Good.
Well, thanks a lot for having us.
We had a lot of fun learning about communicating, and I liked what you had said about not freaking out, like being kind and not freaking out. But when you say that in being kind, like you said when we said before that the guy made his wife look like an idiot, what can somebody do to help in the kind department? Because I mean, if Nina were to ask me, hey baby, do I look fat in these pants? And I answered her to say, no, baby, the pants have nothing to do with it.
That would not be high on my list of recommended responses.
Unless you want to get a divorce couple out of it. This is what I've been doing.
I'll tell you what I say in similar situations. If Judy asks me, does this look good on me? And this is very genuine. I will say, I'm not the best judge because you look beautiful to me no matter what you're wearing. And then I will actually consider, I have actually said that because I actually mean it. And then I will actually say, but I think the red one's better. Yeah. You know what I mean? Or whatever. I'll think about it then. Yeah. But the initial thought, that's genuine. The initial thought is, no, you look beautiful to me no matter what. So I'm not the one to ask for fashion advice first. You know what I mean? I will then offer an opinion if I have one, but it's always going to be based on loving you. It's not going to be biased opinion.
I've learned not to ask for this guy anyway.
No, but I do answer you. And one perfect example is this. Nina and some of the moms in the neighborhood would do something where they would get together once a month and for an excuse to drink, I guess. I don't know. And, they started doing it at each other's house. And one time, one girl decided, I'm going to rent out this like lingerie store, like close it so we can have drinks in there and try on stuff and blah, blah, blah. So they all did that. And I was out doing some work or whatever. And Nina had sent pictures of different outfits. And I was like, yeah, they're nice. They're nice. And later on, she was upset with me. She's like, because everybody else sent pictures to their husbands and they were like, oh, wow, that's so gorgeous. That's so sexy. And she goes, you were like, it's okay. And I said, oh, okay, well, hang on. I didn't want to say it in front of everybody, but that outfit didn't accentuate your beauty, essentially. It was a nice outfit. It was lace and everything, but the way it sat on you, it didn't compliment you. You're much hotter than that outfit. And if I would have said that to her, first off, she wouldn't have spent $200 on the damn outfit.
That's why I was upset. That is why I was upset. Because I brought that outfit home and never wore it and I spent $400 on the outfit that I never wore because this guy did not give me his honest opinion, and I wanted it for him.
If I was in person, it would have been a different thing. But it was on the phone, and it was just a quick little, not rock the boat kind of thing. So
I rocked my credit card.
It's a great example.
She's like, yeah, I see what you're saying now. You know what I mean? It's a little old fashioned for what you.
But everyone there was telling me to buy it because it looked good on me. So I guess they don't want me to look good.
No, it is interesting, isn't it? It's an example of one of my favorite ideas also, which is no matter what rule you have, it never works all the time. So there's exceptions. There's always things like no matter what clever ideas that I come up with, it's like, except when it doesn't work. It works well, except there's a great example. It's like, ooh, bummer. Probably should have told her. Who knows? You couldn't know that until it happened.
Well, those are thoughts that came in my head, and I wanted to finish it before we got off with you guys. But okay, so you were saying where we can find you. You found your website or anything. What about social media? Do you have any social media?
Yeah, we have Dr. Bruce Chalmer on Facebook. And we're at this point, I have an Instagram, but I would just go to Facebook and search for Dr. Bruce Chalmer.
Okay,
and you'll find our social media presence is there as well.
Very good, very good.
Perfect.
And your podcast is everywhere you listen to podcasts as well. I think I saw it on a few different platforms myself.
I was good on that.
Yeah. We happen to be on the same server, Podbean, as you are.
Oh, there you go.
So we're on there too. But yes, like anywhere you can find a podcast, you can find us. We do both video and audio. I think Spotify only does the ones that we did that are just audio. So some of the video ones don't show up on Spotify. But if you're looking for our podcast, go to our website, and that's the easiest way to find it, ctn7.com.
And you also have a YouTube channel with some.
I do have Bruce Chalmer YouTube channel as well that'll actually post the podcast episodes as well. It gets posted on
Absolutely.
YouTube.
We'll put that all in the show notes. Well, thank you again. It was a pleasure having this conversation.
Thank you. This was fun.
I'm sure we're going to talk to you guys again soon.
Well,
we'll look forward to it. Yes, we'll talk to you next
month. For people out there to see that maybe they didn't succeed in their first marriage, that you can absolutely succeed and have a wonderful marriage in a second marriage.
Absolutely.
It is indeed possible. We know it.
Love is better the second time around, as they say.
Have faith. Good will come out.
Have faith.
Thank you, guys.
You're welcome.
Bye.